I'm going to step back here, but hopefully you guys can see okay what I'm going to write on the board and stuff. And I know I feel like looking at the screen, I'm probably right on top of you, but we've got 5 people here in person, and I'm excited to get teaching. Although what did I do with, oh, I'm missing one thing. Oh, well, most important thing, my notes. But no, it's all good. No, I've got it here, so I know what I'm doing. All right. Well, hey, so you guys that are online, feel free to unmute as we go through and we talk about any of this stuff. I'm seeing Dan Andresi on. How you doing, Dan? You don't have to unmute, but just saying hi to you. So haven't seen you for a while. Hope you're doing well. All right. Anything exciting? Anybody got any wins or successes? Any good things that have taken place?
I closed on a property yesterday.
Awesome. Congrats. That's good. That's a good deal. I know I had heard that there was maybe some issues with the possession.
Yes.
But you guys worked out?
I'm trying to, yeah.
All right.
They might still be there when we're moving in, but
That's always a pain. So, all right. Anybody else? Any wins or successes? Good things.
Signed my first fire broker.
Signed your first fire broker. Good job. That's awesome.
With a pretty good client, too. Really great.
with the extreme NDA guy.
Yeah, that one.
Nice.
Signed him. He's flying in from Hawaii. We're driving around Herman on Monday.
That's awesome.
So,
Nice. Good job.
hook him on residential, get him for commercial.
Cool. All right. Well, good. Okay. Well, so here's what we're going to do is today we're going to be talking about lead generation. And so what I want to do with that is kind of, we're going to approach it from a couple of different avenues with that. And what I mean by that is, first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to walk you guys through a process that is a normal process that agents will go through. And what I mean by that is in terms of categories or thinking of one of two things. Either if you're a new agent, which I know many of you are, the process you're going to go through as you get your business up and running, but then there are others that I can see on here that are agents who have been around for a while. And so for them, the process is still the same, but maybe they're in a different category than what you guys are going to be in on this category, if that makes sense. So here's where I want to start with and I got to make sure here where I'm standing that you guys online can see. So if I start right here, it looks like it should be about where I can do it. Okay. So if you were to look at and think of this is the poorly drawn. So let me redo it here. Of the learning curve. So think of this as being the learning curve. And so if I were to just kind of finish this off here like this, anytime you learn a new skill, anytime you are learning anything, you are going to go through this process of what this looks like here. Now, this is half of a bell curve is really what it is, but it's the learning curve. In fact, there's a book that the name of the book is called Mastery. That is kind of a hard one to find. I almost said artist. The author is, if I remember right, is George Leonard, but the name of the book is Mastery. And he talks about basically what this looks like. If anytime you're going to master a skill, you're going to go through a process that looks like this. And what this is essentially I've worked on the skill, I've worked on the skill, I've worked on the skill, and nothing happens. But then what happens is all of a sudden you get this huge run up and then a slight decline, which is what you kind of see here. And then you would continue on like this and then have another run up type of a thing. So as you go through, and if you're new, you're going to be starting here doing this. If you are an agent who's been around for a while, but you're wanting to go to the next level, chances are you're going to be in this area and then have this same type of a breakthrough. So what I want to do though is I want to break this down into some areas that is going to look like this. Okay. Now, think of this as being the journey or the process that you're going to go through. So what we're going to do, remember I said we're going to kind of go at this from two different angles. The first angle is I just want to explain to you what the process looks like so that you can understand the process as we go through it. The second way we're going to go through this, so probably tomorrow, so some today, but probably mostly tomorrow, what we're going to do is we're going to go through tomorrow and talk about here's all the different ways that you can prospect. In fact, either late today in the class or tomorrow morning, I'm going to have you guys give to me, we're going to make a list up here on the board of all the possible ways that you could generate business. And then we're going to go through and talk about how do you do it effectively with each of those. So today is kind of going to be more about just the general process of prospecting and generating business. And then tomorrow we'll get into some specifics on each of the avenues that you could use, if that makes sense. All right. So think of it this way. This first category up here, so for you guys that are online, I'll tell you what I'm writing, although I'm writing it very poorly. Sorry, I can't talk and spell. If I quit talking, I can get it. Okay, the first area up here is what we would call the activities phase. So the first phase in this process is what we would call the activities phase. In the activities phase is where, for a new agent, it's, I got to learn how to get on the computer. I got to learn how to access the MLS. I got to learn how to do a CMA. I got to learn how to use the phone system. I got to get a key to the office. Like, that's all the activities phase for a new agent. For a seasoned agent, this activities phase is going to be just checking your email, going on to Facebook or social media. It's just things that are attending classes. So like being in class today would fall under this activities phase. These are activities that we do, but they don't really do anything to your income directly. They have an indirect effect on your income.
Well, someone made the comment to me that he didn't use the term, but he's, don't stay in the activities area too long, get busy.
Correct.
And I'm going, I need more activities. I need, want to have all my tools.
Yes.
And I don't want to say I'm scared, but I want to have my tools, and I don't feel like I have my tools.
What you're talking about is exactly what I'm talking about right here. So keep in mind, that is exactly what we're talking about. Is what happens is we tend to have this, I got to get ready to get going. So I'm getting ready, but here's the problem with it, is that will get stuck in you. I'm going to just say it as blunt as I can maybe, and it's an excuse. Your brain, what happens is the purpose of your brain is to keep you safe. And so because you're in something now that is maybe not familiar to you, what ends up happening then is our brain convinces us that, well, I'm going to get prospecting and I'm going to go do all this stuff, but I first need to understand, I need to know what I'm doing, because what if somebody says, yes, come list my house, and I don't know how to do it? What if they say to write an offer and I don't know? Like, that's what you're talking about, Carla. That's what's going on. And just know it's real, it's normal, but it's also there to keep you safe. And as long as you stay in this safe zone, you're not going to make any money. So I know you don't like it, but that's what this activities phase is, and it is normal. I mean, like, I'm going to share with you guys the story about me going through this process here in just a minute, and explain to you how I got through it and what I did to get out of these different phases. But it is very normal to feel like, well, I got to understand all this stuff first. But just know it's okay to say, I got to learn how to do this stuff, but you also need to do it as part of a schedule. You got to do it as part of I'm not going to take my whole day, my whole week to do these things. I'll spend a couple of hours every day on these things, but that's it. Make sense? All right. So that's the activities phase. The next phase is what we would call the contacts phase. So now let me start with this. As we get into this contacts phase, let me talk to you about what happened with me in this process. So I got my real estate license, and I was working at a bank first. So I worked at a bank, and I was in charge of the research and adjustments department, meaning if somebody had a problem with their bank account, they would go into a branch and they would say to the branch, hey, this check cleared my account and it cleared for the wrong amount or whatever. And then they would send it to us. We would then research that. And once we figured out either no, that is what it was written for, we would send it to them, or we would see, oh yeah, they did it as $92 and it should have been $42. Somebody keyed something wrong. So we would then go research that. Well, I got tired of doing that and decided I wanted to do a job where the harder I worked, the more money I got paid. So I had always just kind of been the type that I would go to my boss and say, tell me what I should be doing work-wise. And he would tell me what to do and I would go do it. So when I came into real estate, I went to my manager and I said, tell me what to do. And what he said was this. The first thing he said is, go make a list of everyone you know. Well, which category does that fit into? Making a list.
I would say activities.
Yeah, that's right. It's going to fall under this activities phase, which is again, this, I'm not saying this activities phase is not important, but so I went and sat down and made a list. Then I went back to my manager and I said, okay, I've made the list. Now what? And he said, go put together a letter and send out some business cards to all those people. Well, that still falls under this activities category, meaning the making of the letter and then sending it out. Okay, well, now what should I do? Well, after he had kind of given me all the what to do things, which essentially that's what I would say for you guys. If you have not made a list of everyone you know, do that. If you have not let them know you're in real estate, do that. But once you've done that, essentially, then we got to get out of this activities phase into this context phase. So what my manager told me is, he said, here's what I want you to do. How much money do you want to make? And I told him the answer that almost every agent that comes into this business ever says, which is
$100,000.
$100,000. So I said, I want to make $100,000. He said, great. So at that time, our average commission check was about $2,000. And so if I wanted to make $100,000, I needed to close 50 transactions. So I went to him and said, what should I do? And then he gave me a formula, which I think we've talked about a time or two, but he gave me this formula to go to, which essentially is as many contacts as you make on a daily basis is how many transactions you'll do. So he said to me, if you want to make $100,000, you need to do 50 contacts a day. I said, great. So I started doing 50 contacts a day. So I was in this phase here doing 50 contacts a day. Now, I didn't do it every day, meaning we had sales meeting one day, or in the case of you guys, your Tuesdays and Thursdays, a lot of you are in class with me from 10 until noon. So that would make it hard to get 50 every single day. Not that you couldn't, but you could. But so for me, there was one day we would have sales meetings. So I didn't do it on those days, but every other day that I did. So essentially I was doing 225 contacts every week. Well, after a year and a half in the business, I was making the same amount of money that I had made working at the bank. And I don't know about you guys, but I didn't come into this business to only replace what I was making at my other job. I came into this business because I wanted to make a lot of money. So I got frustrated. And after 18 months, I was pretty frustrated because I was not making the income that I felt like I wanted to be making. So I went to a training that was put on by a guy who has become somewhat of a mentor for me now. And this guy actually lives in Park City now. When I met him, he lived in La Jolla, California. But I was in this training and he wrote this on the board. And what he said is this, that now, if you notice this line here and say this line is your income, meaning if all you ever do is this stuff that's in the activities phase, how much money are you going to make in this business? Yeah, none. You might stumble across a deal here or there, but you're essentially going to make none in the activities phase. So I then started and what he explained to me, this guy, is that I was now in this contacts phase. In the contacts phase, what do you see happening with this line during the contacts phase? And that's probably a better way of drawing it. But
Well, it's going to stay level too for a while.
yeah, for a while it kind of stays level, but then it starts to go up a little bit. But if this is your income, that's how much money you make when you're in the contacts phase. So let me back up for a minute. Remember I said to you, my manager said, if you want to make $100,000, you need to make 50 contacts a day. I was making essentially 50 contacts every day, 225 a week, not 250. I was doing 225 a week. Well, a year and a half in, I was not doing 50 transactions a year. If I would have been, I would have been happy, but I wasn't doing it. So I went to this other training and was saying, okay, so you guys are going to hear that if as many contacts you do as a daily basis, how many transactions you're going to do. It's a good place to start. but that is actually not necessarily true. Now, I'm sure that if you took, in terms of all the agents that prospect in the business, and you were to average it out, you probably would come up with something close to that of however many contacts they do a day is how much money they make. But here, let me say it to you this way. Here's the proof of that. I have watched, personally, I did it, 50 contacts a day and didn't make 50 transactions a year. I also know Brian Burnett, who is our top in terms of individual agent number of transactions closed. He closes about 150 transactions a year as a personal agent. He makes 50 contacts a day. So something wasn't adding up to me when I see that. I was doing 50 contacts a day, not doing 50 transactions. Brian Burnett does 50 contacts a day and does 150 transactions. So how's that possible?
Quality of contacts.
Okay.
I would say he's been in the business a lot longer too, right? So he's got referrals and everything else lined up.
Okay, good. There's no question there's some to that, Matt, for sure.
Your goal was contacts, not appointments.
Perfect. So yeah, what Jake is saying right here is exactly right. See, notice when, I'll say it again. When your goal is to do 50 contacts a day, your focus is on making contacts. And if your focus is on making contacts, guess what you will have at the end of the day? Contacts. See, that was the problem, is I was focused on making 50 contacts a day, and I would do anything and everything I could. Now, have any of you done 50 contacts in a day? Anybody on Zoom? Dan, you ever done 50 in a day? Anyone? Bueller?
Called 50 people, never gotten 50 answers.
Okay, so Aaron's made 50 phone calls, but yeah, that doesn't count.
No.
It's talked to,
Yeah, no.
and nobody online's responding to
10,
me.
maybe 15, 20.
Okay. So wait, how many have you done, Aaron?
Let's say like yesterday, I talked to 10 people after calling 50 people.
Okay, so you talked to, how long did it take you to talk to 10 people?
It took me all day to call those 50 people. And
Okay, so it
well,
took
let's
a lot of the
let's
day.
say 4 hours.
Okay,
I'll say 4 hours to call.
anyone else? Let's see. Dan said he's done it a couple times. Good. So Dan, how long did it take you to do, to get 50 contacts in a day? How many hours? Garrett said after 200 calls I have. So Garrett, same with you. How long did it take you to do that? Dan said 4+ hours to get to 50 contacts. See, that's my experience as well. Same thing that Dan
It took
is
me
saying.
6 hours.
Took you 6 hours. Okay. So somewhere we're talking between 4 and 6 hours to get 50 contacts in a day. Now, so stop and think about that for a minute. If you're going to spend 4 to 6 hours on the phone making phone calls, for me, here was the problem. So I'm not saying for you guys, but for me, here was the problem. My goal every day was I got to get to 50 contacts. And once I hit 50 contacts, I can be done now. I can go home. I could feel good about myself. I could feel like I did my job. And so that's what I did, is I would go and get 50 contacts. And here's how I would do it. I would go knock on doors for 2 hours. And what I found is typically knocking on doors, in 2 hours, I would generally get close to between 20 and 25. So I might have had to go for 2.5 hours some days to get to the 25 contacts. But usually 2 to 2.5 hours, I could hit 25 contacts out knocking on doors. Then I would go back to the office and I'd go to lunch, go back to the office, and then I'd get on the phone and call till I got my other 25 contacts. Well, it would take me most of the day. That's just what you guys heard there. Between 4 and 6 hours is what it would take me to get to 50 contacts. Well, by the time I got that, I was like, whew, I accomplished a lot today. And I would go home feeling accomplished. But I was not making the $100,000 a year. I wasn't doing 50 transactions. That's probably what I should say instead of the number. But I wasn't doing 50 transactions a year. And I was frustrated because supposedly there's this formula of many contacts as you make is how much money you're going to make. But then, like I already told you, you got Brian Burnett who's doing 50 contacts, making 150 transactions a year, 3 times that. Well, see, part of it is your skill level. But here's the bigger thing. What I'm wanting you to see for right now is the focus that I had. My focus was on getting contacts. So when somebody answered the phone, what I got was a contact. I didn't get anything out of it. Because in my mind, I was trying as fast as I could to get to 50 contacts so I could be done. Well, after I met this guy and he introduced me to this, and he said, here's what he said, your problem is you're stuck in the contacts phase. In the contacts phase, that's what your focus is on. And so guess what you're going to get? Contacts. And that's what I ended up with, which is what your income will look like here. So the next phase in this is what we would call the appointments. The appointments phase. Now, as you look at this, oh, say for you guys online, since I just saw somebody drop off, I don't know who it was, but, oh, no, I do know who it was. Throw in a first and last name so I at least know you were on the class. So put a first and last name in the chat box. And you guys all signed in, right? Okay, perfect. All right. So the next phase of this is what we would call the appointments phase. Now, as you look at this learning curve, where's the steepest part of the curve?
Or,
Well, in the appointments phase. So yeah, so I didn't draw this probably. It probably should be more in the middle there. But so notice that the steepest part of this learning curve is in the appointments phase. So here's what I found is as you focus on contacts, guess what you will get? Contacts. But if you will focus on appointments, you're going to get appointments. So what happened was this. So I went to this training, and in this training, the guy's name was Doug, that was the trainer. And what he said to me is, he explained this, and he said, your problem, my problem, was I was stuck in this 50 in the contacts phase. And in the contacts phase, what you're going to get is contacts. When you go to the appointments phase, he said, that's where the rubber's going to hit the road, and that's where you're going to make a lot of money. And so what happened was this, is he said to me, you have been focused on making 50 contacts every day. Starting tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock, and it really could start whenever, but he said, starting tomorrow at 9 o'clock, your job is to set an appointment. And you are not going to quit until you set an appointment. And I said, okay. Now, I was a little bit nervous of that because prior to that, I would do 50 contacts a day. And in a week, I might set 1 or 2 appointments at most. And he said, if you want to make the $100,000 in this business, or I probably should quit saying 100,000 because I should just start saying 50 transactions. If you want to do 50 transactions, but here's what I'll tell you guys. Any of you guys do 50 transactions, you're making over $100,000. So just know that. So what he said, if you want to do that, you've got to get out of this contacts phase and get into the appointments phase. And what that looks like is tomorrow morning, you don't go home until you set an appointment, no matter how many contacts it takes you. And I was like, okay. And he said, so are you willing to do that? And I was like, I don't think so. Because remember, I was doing 50 a day and not necessarily setting an appointment. So I was kind of like, oh. So he said to me, you can do this. You can do this. And I said, okay. So he got me to commit that I would do it for the next week. So this was on a Tuesday. And he said, I want you to commit to doing it from today, Tuesday, until, or excuse me, the next day, Wednesday, until the next Tuesday. So from Wednesday to Tuesday. He said, I want you to commit to that you will set 5 appointments from that class until the next week's class that was going to be on Wednesday. So this was a Tuesday. He said, I want you to commit to it till Wednesday next week. I said, great, I'll do it. So basically he said, okay, you're going to set 5 appointments. I said, yes. He said, okay, I want to make sure you understand what you're committing to. And he said, you're going to go home tonight and you're going to tell your wife, I am not coming home tomorrow if I don't set an appointment. And I was like, whoa, hold on. Like, I don't get to go home if I don't set an appointment. He said, well, that's the idea of if you can't go home until you set an appointment, you don't go home until you set an appointment. And I said, well, I don't know if I want to commit to that. And he said, you can do this. You can do it. And it's only 1 week. So I finally just said, okay, I'll do it. He convinced me to yeah, essentially. So he convinced me to do it. So I said, okay. So I went home. I told my wife, hey, so I went to this cool training today. I learned this cool thing. And this guy was telling me that like he could get my income to go up, which at that point was significantly under $100,000, by the way. He told me if I'll do this, my income will go up to over $100,000 a year. And I said, oh, okay, I'll do it. So my wife said, all right, so what is it? And I said, I can't come home tomorrow till I set an appointment. And she said, well, then you better like get up early and go to work and you better get the appointment because we got blah, blah, blah in the evening and you have to be home for it. I said, okay, now let me go back in time. Prior to that, when I was in this phase, I would show up to the office on a daily basis around 9. And at 9, I would typically then go into a room, actually a conference room that was not much bigger than this or smaller than this. But I would go in there with a lady by the name of Shirley. Shirley and I would role play for 15, 20 minutes. And then we would go jump in the car. We would go out and door knock. And then we'd come back and we'd go separate ways for lunch. And then we'd meet back up and do our phone calls. Well, I would typically start that at 9 a.m., but by 10, we would be door knocking. Now, let me ask you guys, if I said that to you, and so this goes for you guys on Zoom too, I want you to answer this question, and also, Luciana, if you'll put first and last name in the chat box, just so I have a record of who is here, I'd appreciate it. So here's my question for you. If I said that to you guys, tomorrow you cannot go home, so you're gonna show up to work tomorrow, but you cannot go home tomorrow until you set an appointment. What time are you going to show up? What time are you going to start work tomorrow? That's probably the better way of saying it. So in the chat box or unmute, tell me. You guys can unmute if you want. I'm happy with that. You guys in the room, what time are you coming to work tomorrow? If you can't go home until you set an appointment.
7 if you need an hour to prepare with role play. Reps.
Okay.
People might answer the door at 8.
So yeah, I see a 7 a.m. online too. Okay, so Philip would be here at 7 for role play. Dan says 7:30. Okay. Yeah. What, Carla?
Well, understand if you're effective and you said 4 to 6 hours.
That was to get 50 contacts. I didn't say how long it's going to take you to
But
get
I
an
know,
appointment.
but I said if you concentrate on an appointment in 4 to 6 hours, you probably get an appointment out of those 50, if that's what you were concentrated on.
For sure. So what time are you going to come to work?
2.
7 a.m.
7. Okay, so here it is. So Andy said 7 as well, and Elizabeth said 7:30. Yeah, I'm with the 7:30 crew. I showed up at 7:30 the next day. Now, prior to that, I was getting there at 9, but the same thing, like I said, my wife's like, you better get to work and get early. So I showed up at the office at 7:30. At 7:30, I was pulling for sale by owners. I was getting expireds. I was grabbing every lead that I ever had. And I was getting everything ready because technically you can't start making phone calls till 8 a.m. is what the telemarketing laws are. Now, there are plenty of agents who do it before that, which, by the way, we'll talk on it tomorrow as we go through and talk about the expireds. There are agents who start calling these expired listings at 6:45. Yeah, well,
I'm so mad when you call.
there's a reason they call at 6:45. Now, keep in mind, I am not telling you to do that, and this is being recorded, so I have proof when you try to sue me, when you get in trouble, that I am not recommending you do that. You should follow the law, which says 8 o'clock. But just know there are agents calling at 6:45 these expired listings because you've heard the saying, the early bird gets the worm. Usually the first or second person that calls these expired listings gets them, and with for sale by owners as well. So just know there are people calling that early. So I wasn't willing to do that, but I was there at 7:30 getting everything lined up so that as soon as 8 o'clock hit, like my hand was on the phone ready to pick it up and start dialing as soon as 8 o'clock hit. Now, here's the interesting thing. Remember, Shirley and I would go and meet in the office 9:15 to role play. So I'm on the phone. Well, I've called the expireds. I've called the for sale by owners. I'm now calling into my lead follow-up, which is where I decided to go, which kind of makes sense if you stop and think about it. Here's the frustration for me. So many agents will call a new lead. They will. They'll get on and call new leads. But it is in the lead follow-up. 75% of your business is going to come as a result of lead follow-up. Meaning something that, and I don't know if we've talked about this or not, but when you're prospecting, you want to be on 2 parallel tracks, now and in the future. So I'm looking for now business, but I'm also looking for business in the future. And the problem is that most agents get so focused on, bless you, this now business. They're looking for, they want a deal because you got to make your Mercedes payment next month. And so you need to go get a deal so you can make your payment. See, the problem is, most of the people you're going to talk to are going to end up being probably down here in this future category, which means they're not quite ready to do a deal yet. And so what happens though is agents get so focused on this now that they forget about the future. And so Brian Burnett, if you guys were on Morning Ascent today, I didn't want to say it in that large of a crowd, but Brian Burnett is who I was talking about this morning when I said he will follow up with, if he gets a lead that is going to do something in the next year, he will continue to follow up. Even though a Mike Ferry, which is a trainer that our company followed religiously for a long time, will say top agents will hold on to a lead for 7 days and no longer. Well, Brian Burnett's closing 150 transactions a year, and he holds on to somebody that says, yeah, we're going to sell in the next year. He holds on and does lead follow-up. See, he prospects on 2 parallel tracks. That's part of what you've got to do, is you've got to be prospecting on 2 parallel tracks. And it is in the lead follow-up is where 75% of your business is going to come from. But most agents will call somebody, they'll get a lead, and then they don't ever call them again. They'll write it down on a sticky note, and then they never call them again. You've got to have a process set up as a way to do lead follow-up, because that's where most of the business is going to come from. So now back to my story. I got to set an appointment. It's Wednesday morning. I've now got to set an appointment. I've called the expireds. I called the for sale by owners, which, by the way, I've never really liked doing for sale by owners or expireds. I just always called them because I felt like that was the quickest source to business, which I found out isn't necessarily true. Meaning, yes, they are looking at doing something, but but you've also got a lot more competition, and your skill set has got to be a lot higher as well for those people. So what happened then is I start calling these leads that I had. So I'm hoping what you're taking from what I'm saying right now as I'm telling you the story is have a process for lead follow-up that you will follow up with the leads, because I'm telling you, most of the business is going to come as a result of following up with people. An agent whose office is like almost right above, well, I don't know where we're at. It's close to right above where we're at right now. Was talking to him a year or so ago. He listed a for sale by owner. He works a lot of for sale by owners. He called them 33 times, talked to them 33 times before he got the listing. The magic is in the lead follow-up, but most agents are really bad at lead follow-up. So make sure you're good at lead follow-up. All right. So I start calling these leads. Well, in the process of calling these leads, I set an appointment. Well, now the other side of this that I didn't tell you guys is what he told me is once you set an appointment, you can be done for the day. You don't have to prospect anymore. And he told me, he had asked me, how long does it take you to get to 50 contacts? And similar to what these guys said online, it took me about 4 hours to get to 50 contacts. More people back then would answer the phone than they do now. So unfortunately, back then it was a little easier to get people on the phone, but not a lot, actually. There's not a lot difference, but a little bit easier. So it would take me 4 hours. Today it might take you 5 or 6, but it would take me between 4 and 5 hours to get to 50 contacts. Well, what he told me too is when you go to this appointments phase, now make sure you hear what I'm saying. In the appointments phase, you will prospect half as much, but you'll double your income. And that's what he told me. If you will set one new appointment every day, you will prospect half as much as I was to get to here, but you'll double your income. Well, I was on board for that. The other thing he told me is once you set your appointment for the day, you can be done prospecting if you want. So I go and do that. Well, I'm making these lead follow-up calls. I set an appointment before 9 o'clock. So between 8 and 9 o'clock, that first day, I set an appointment. Now, why do you think I got one so fast on that first day?
You're focused on setting an appointment.
Good. So the first reason is yes, both of those things. I was focused on an appointment and I was trying harder to get an appointment. There's still another reason, because here's what I'm telling you. The first few days, it was pretty easy, but after that, it got harder and harder. Now, why would that be? That's right. That's right.
And then you ran out of new follow-ups.
Yeah, essentially, there's low-hanging fruit out there that I went and grabbed the low-hanging fruit. Well, once you've picked the low-hanging fruit, now what's left? Yeah, you're going to have to work to get up in the tree to get a little bit more of that stuff. So what happened to me, and I would say kind of the same thing with you guys, if you said to yourself, I won't go home until I set an appointment, the first day or two is kind of easy. Now, depending on Phillips, probably the newest in here, it's probably not gonna be as, yeah, no, that's true, you could be, I don't know.
We started at the same time.
Oh, same day, okay, you both are.
Like-
So,
Yeah.
so yeah, for you guys, it might not be, there might not be as much low hanging fruit because you haven't been prospecting. So you don't have a bunch of leads to follow up on necessarily. But just know that like there is some low hanging fruit that makes it a little bit easier. But as time goes on, it's going to get a little bit more difficult to do that. So it took me a little bit longer, but those first couple of days, by 9 o'clock and actually by 10, those first 2 days, I had set an appointment. Now remember, he said you'll prospect half as much and double your income. Well, it was usually taking me a minimum of 4 hours to get 50 contacts. And the first 2 days, in less than 2 hours, both days, and the first day within an hour, I had set an appointment, which meant I was done prospecting. And it was like, go home. So both days, I did what work needed to be done at the office, and then I turned and went home. I was home by noon. I walk in the door and my wife's like, what are you doing? Are you here for lunch? And I'm like, no, I'm done working for the day. Now, keep in mind, I've been 1.5 years of working, essentially being at the office from 9 until at least 5 every day. And now all of a sudden I'm walking in the door at noon, 2 days in a row. And my wife's like, what's going on? And I'm like, well, I've set my appointment for the day, so I'm done. And she was like, yeah, I'm not sure this is a good idea.
I got that made
Yeah, well,
Yeah,
yeah,
right.
because I mean, it makes sense though, right? Because in it looks like I'm working half as much all of a sudden, and just because I set an appointment doesn't mean I all of a sudden got paid for it, right? So, but part of the deal was that, and I just told my wife, hey, well, all I know is I've been 2 days in a row and I've set appointments, and that's typically a week's worth of work that I was doing before. Well, so like I said, the next day didn't happen as easily, but I was able to get my appointment typically within 2 hours every day. And not every day, but just about every day I would get an appointment within that 2 hour window. Well, I already asked, and you guys already answered, what changed was my approach. You guys didn't say it this way, but my approach changed. So I want to show you what that looked like. Because in the contacts phase, let me show you what it looks like. So if I go over and let's say I knocked on Philip's door, or I call him on the phone and he answers the door. This is what my approach looked like before. Hi, my name's Russ. I'm with Century 21. We just listed your neighbor's home over here. It's got 4 bedrooms and 3 baths. It's listed for $550. And I just wondering who you know that wants to move into the area.
Nobody at the moment.
You don't know anyone? Okay, great. Well, how about you? When do you plan on moving?
Not anytime soon.
You don't have any plans? Okay. Well, do you know anybody else thinking about buying or selling?
No.
No? Okay. Well, here's my business card. If you hear of anybody, let me know.
Okay.
Now, let me ask you, don't answer, but how many of you, that's what your prospecting sounds like? Because if that's what it sounds like, no, I said, don't answer, Matt. Aaron and Matt both are like, yeah, that's me.
I couldn't, the guilt was too much.
Yeah, right.
Sometimes you're not asking the right questions, right? You have to learn that.
Yeah, and so as a result of it is what happened though, here's the thing to keep in mind. What was that a contact?
Yeah.
Absolutely, it was a contact. And so what I was doing is I would have this little thing where I'd be like, okay, there's one. Then I would call up Jake and I'd do the exact same thing to him. There's 2. Then I get to Matt, there's 3. Then I get to Aaron, there's 4. Get to Carla, there's 5. Okay, well, only 10 more times of doing that and I can be done for the day. And here's the thing, keep in mind, when your focus is on contacts, a certain number of contacts, the faster I can get to 50, the faster I can be done. So I don't want to spend a whole lot of time talking to Philip because he's already told me no, and he's a contact. So now I got my contact. If I can get to Jake, the faster. Can you see the problem?
He's not low hanging fruit.
Yeah, for sure wasn't. What?
Gonna make you work for
That's
it.
right.
On a new approach would be.
So that's what I'm going to show you.
How many kids do you have? 3. Oh, well, I have 3 too. I need to feed them.
I need to
Now do you know of anybody?
buy a house now. Okay. So yeah, so that's the problem with the contacts phase is when you are focused on, when your focus every day is I got to make an X number of contacts. Now here's the thing. What I don't want you to do is leave here saying, Russ said I shouldn't keep track of my contacts. I did not say you shouldn't keep track.
Write that down.
Yeah, I did not say you shouldn't keep track. You should keep track of your contacts. What I'm saying is that should not be your focus for the day. is I am going to prospect to get 30 contacts. Now, here's the thing though, I will say early on, so for Philip and Aaron that are brand new, you probably are going to have a certain number of contacts that you're going to do initially. You're going to have to do that initially of saying, okay, because part of it is you may not have the skill set to do what I'm talking about yet, but very quickly you need to get there. You got to get to the point that you can say, I can set an appointment every single day. Now, can I put you on the spot for a minute, Matt?
Sure.
But I'm not really putting you on the spot.
Yeah.
But you have listened to me make a lot of calls.
Yes.
Do I just give up?
No. In fact, I was just thinking about that conversation we had. Russ would have said, oh, well, how long have you lived in the neighborhood? He would have said something to get them talking, right? Which I've got to work on, right? Sometimes I'm like, okay, thanks for your time. Here's a business card, right?
That's right. Yeah. So that's what changed. See, in the contacts phase, if as long as, for me, here's how I defined a contact. If I said, my name's Russell with Century 21, are you thinking about buying or selling? Or if I said, we listed a home and do you know anybody? If as long as I got out, my name is Russ with Century 21, if he hung up on me, slammed the door, whatever, that was a contact. Now, you may or may not count that as a contact, but for me, that was a contact. And so for me, I was like, well, there's one. Now, if I could get hung up on 50 times in a row, I was done prospecting and I would go home feeling like I worked really hard today. But there's a difference between working really hard and making a lot of money. And I came into, I don't know about you guys, but I came into this business not to work really hard, but to make a lot of money. So what I'm saying is you got to change the focus. So now let me show you, I'll show the difference. Here's how I approach it now. So in fact, I'll do it with you, Matt. So you throw whatever at me, okay? So if I knocked on his door or called him on the phone, so, hey, my name's Russ, I'm with Century 21, and we just listed your neighbor's home over here. It's on Birch and Pine. It's got 3 bedrooms, 2 baths. It's listed for $550,000. And I'm just wondering who you know that would want to move in the area.
I don't know anybody.
You don't know anyone. Okay, well, hey, I appreciate you thinking about that. Let me ask you, what about you? Any plans on you moving in the near future?
No, my kids are young, still in elementary school, so we don't have any plans on moving.
So young kids, still in elementary school. Oh, that's cool. So how old are your kids?
I've got one that's 6 and one that is 10.
One that's 6 and one that's 10. Oh, good for you. That's cool. That's great. Well, hey, so how long have you lived here?
8 years.
You've been here 8 years? Wow, good for you. Where did you move from?
We were in Denver, Colorado before we moved here.
From Denver to here. So what city in Denver were you in?
Central Denver. We were in Denver, so right, basically I-25, Colorado Boulevard, so Central Denver.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I actually spent a couple years in Denver, and so I just was curious if I knew where you were at. But I was mostly in like Littleton, that area. But so what brought you here?
A job transfer. So I used to come to Salt Lake City on business, and I'd get a hotel up in Park City, liked it, and I had an opportunity to take a job out here, and we jumped on it.
Wow, that's awesome. Well, good for you. So job transfer. Well, cool. Well, hey, if you ever were to move again, where would you go next?
We love the Sandy area. We might try to get a little bit bigger house, or maybe look in the Cottonwood Heights holiday area. We like those areas too.
So Sandy, Cottonwood Heights. Okay, so when would that be?
I would have to say a couple of years, because my one daughter's in first grade, and we want her to be at the elementary school. So about a couple of years down the road.
Okay,
a
couple of years. Okay, good. Well, that sounds great. Well, hey, let me ask you, when the time comes for you to put your home on the market, would you rather be over-prepared or under-prepared?
Over-prepared.
Over. Okay, good. Well, so one of the things that I do for my clients, and I work at their pace, just so you know, is I work at my client's pace. But what I'd like to do is schedule a time for you and I to sit down, spend 20, 30 minutes that I'm just going to walk you through what's going on in the market, help you understand that so that you can keep an eye on it over the next couple of years, so that when you're ready, we could get your home on the market and get you top dollar. So what works best for you, afternoons or evenings?
Evenings.
Evenings. Okay. Now notice I'm getting an appointment. Now let me pause for a minute. Well, actually, let me ask you guys, what do you think about that as me getting an appointment with that?
I love how you brought in what's going on in the market. I want to start using that, right? Because a lot of people know it's a seller's market, but they don't really know all the stuff that's going involved. And you think about it sometimes. I always go, hey, I can sell my house, make $200,000 because it's gone up, but then you go, where would I move to and all that stuff, right?
Right. Okay, Carla?
My first thought was, I already told you that I'm not planning on moving, so I'm probably naturally might get a little frustrated with you, keep asking me questions. I'm just trying to, in my mind, I'm just going, come on, no, I already told you I'm not interested. But then my mind's thinking, we're always thinking about the future. And I always think, if someone called and said, no, I'm not moving, or honestly, truly, if someone tell her, I'd say no. But I know darn well in back of my mind, in another 4 or 5 years, I do want a bigger house when all my kids have their grandkids. I need a bigger house. But if you were to call me right now as an agent, I'd say no, and that would be the end of it.
Okay, and that's fine. I'm
But
okay
it's
with
not
that.
really true.
Yeah, well, that's a good point. Well, that's the other thing too that I would say that I have learned is of all the door knocking that I did, and I did a lot in the early part of my career, it was amazing how many times I would run into a Carla that said, nope, never moving. And then 2 months later, there's a for sale sign in front of her house. So like, keep in mind that does happen as well. But so here's the thing. So anybody on Zoom have any thoughts about me going? Because sometimes people would say, I would never go on an appointment with him if he's 2 years out.
Well, here's the other thing too that you talked about, which I'm learning too, the now and the future business. Sometimes, when I first started, I would go, I want you to sell your house now, not now.
Mhm.
But what I've found out is if you keep in contact with these people, like I'll give you an example. I had a lead, I went in Roy, Utah that you gave me, and I went in and we looked at this condo. Well, she hadn't talked to a loan officer, but I just kept in contact with her, right? She was on the list to call, and now she may be looking at selling her house, but I'm talking, that's 4 months ago, right?
Mhm.
And so what I'm finding now is, so if Russ would have been able to keep in contact with that person, even though it's 3 years, once he got the sell list of their house, the next time they're buying a home, oh, hey, I worked with Russ on this, here's his card, give him a call, right? It builds up that whole referral thing too.
Good.
That we
Yeah.
don't think about.
So, but here's the other thing is, and we've kind of touched on it, Carla did, like saying if we called her right now, she would be saying no, but it actually is not true that she probably is going to do something, although down the road, right? So here's the thing you got to keep in mind. I'm going to fast forward in the story for a second. I did this appointments thing and started after a week of doing it. I could see that this was going to totally change my results in real estate by doing it that way. And so it became my mantra. In fact, I had even made had a piece of paper kind of a thing that said your mission, one appointment, and had that posted in my office because, and even today, if you were to call my wife and say, what was the one thing that Russ would do to be effective? She would say, had to set one appointment a day. Like she was trained when I walked in the door. The question wasn't, did you sell a house today? Like you probably are here or will hear from significant others. And instead, her question every day was, did you set an appointment today? Because I had told her, if I walk in the door and I have not set an appointment, I need you to make me leave. Like, don't feed me dinner or whatever, like kick me out until I go get an appointment. And so it was trained where that was like the first thing I'd walk in the door. Did you get an appointment today? Yep, I did. Okay, good. Then like, you can come in. Like that was how, because she could see that it worked. So what happened then, so let me continue the story because it relates to what we're talking about right now, is after a year of doing that, of me just setting one appointment every day, my income had more than doubled from where it was. And then the next year after that, doing just the same thing, setting one appointment a day, my income doubled again. I got to where I was doing 50 transactions in a year, and I did it by only that one thing. Don't go home until you set an appointment for the day. And I'm telling you, there are times, like I told you the first 2 days with the low-hanging fruit. There were times when I was a little nervous of like, crap, I don't know if I'm going to get an appointment today. But it's amazing how, if you really truly believe and hold yourself to it, like hopefully you're seeing what I'm telling you is like, for me, it was when I walked in the door, my wife would, did you get an appointment today? If I walked in and said no, she was like, okay, well then like you're eating dinner, but then you better go get on the phone and you got to go set an appointment. And that was the way I approached it. It wasn't just, well, if I don't get it, I don't get it, but I'm going to do my best. I'm going to try. Like that doesn't work. It's, you've got to be fully committed to it. So when I fully committed to it, my business took off. And after a couple of years, I was making a very good income doing over 50 transactions a year. And the nice thing is the commissions had gone up from $2,000 on average as well. So it took my income up dramatically more.
Because you're selling higher price houses.
Higher price houses and just home prices were doing kind of what they are now at that time too. So anyway, so here's the point though. What ended up happening then is after about 1.5 years of that, me doing that, and let me see if that's right. Probably 2 years actually. So 2 years of me doing that, I was talking to a friend of mine and the friend said to me, hey, so when are you going to be moving? And similar to you, Carla, so here's my point of this part of the story, is similar to what Carla said, I said, I am not moving. Now, part of it was I had built my sphere of influence to be people from my neighborhood. Like I had gone and gotten to know the people in my neighborhood. And I was starting to get a lot of SOI business out of the neighborhood that I lived in. And so my friend is saying to me, when are you going to move? And I said, I'm not planning to move because I'm getting a ton of business out of here. And if I leave, I know that probably won't happen. Yet, 1 year later, I moved. Within 1 year of him asking me that question, I moved. But keeping in mind exactly what Carla said, if you would have knocked on my door, I would have told you I'm never moving. Even if you would have said, well, if you were to move, where would you go? I maybe would have given you an answer, but I would have said, but I'm not planning to move. Yet within 1 year, I moved. So here's why I say that. To me, there are a lot of agents who, in Matt's scenario, where he said, maybe in the next couple of years, 2 or 3 years, that for me, now again, this depends on where you're at in your business. So we've got Dan Andresi on here, who's an agent in California and does a good amount of business. For him, he might go, I'll stay in touch with you, but I'm not coming to that appointment. But for the rest of you guys, most of you guys, I'm not sure of everybody that's on, but you guys that are here live with me, you should go on that appointment. If you can get one to go out that they say they're 2 years out, you should go on it. And here's why. Number one, you need the experience. But number two is, I'm just like what I told you guys. When I said I was never going to move, and then within 1 year I moved, like that happens. We already talked about, I've knocked on a lot of doors where people told me, I am not moving, I'll never move. And then a couple months later, there's a for sale sign in their front yard. Like, you don't know. Go ahead, Jake.
Like, once you've spoken to them, you've kind of put that idea in their head and it sits there and grows, and then they're like, maybe I should move. It is a good time. Well, I'll go with you.
Go ahead,
So I'm
Carla.
just saying, can you ask them when they say, no, I'm never moving? So can you say that? Are you 100% sure about that? Or are you about 90% sure
Okay,
about that?
I'm going to
answer?
turn that back around on you.
Okay.
Not a role play. If you were not an agent and I knocked on your door and you said what you already told me, which is what?
No, I'm not moving.
And I said, are you 100% sure? How would you answer it?
No, I'm probably about 90% sure.
Is that really how you would have answered it?
Yeah, I probably would have.
Okay, because
Because back in my mind, now that you pressed me, I'm going, well, I am thinking about a bigger house.
okay, which is true, but I think because you trust me, you're willing to tell me that. What did you say, Philip?
I'd probably say yes and then shut the door.
Most people are not going to tell the truth.
Oh, yeah.
Most people are going to say, yeah, I'm 100% sure. And why? Why are they doing it?
It's another salesperson. I think.
They want to get you off. Their objective is to get you off the phone or off their doorstep.
Yeah.
That's all they're trying to do, is get rid of you. And so they'll say, yes, I'm 100% sure, just because they want to get rid of you.
So with Matt's situation, if we go to the appointment and he shows up, do you go through the whole meeting of trying to crystallize them to buying now, or are you
Good question.
setting it up for the future?
Great question. I would not approach it with him as a listing presentation. For me, this is going to be, here's how I think about it. So great question. Thank you for asking. Here's how I like to think about it is, and this, if you've been through the activities management class I teach, this may make sense to you. If you haven't, it probably doesn't. And so I'm not going to spend a ton of time on it, but in the appointments, I think there's I time appointments and there's P time appointments is what I like to call them. I time, which is indirectly productive appointments, and then there's productive appointments. For me, I like to think of an I-time appointment as I'm still prospecting. So think of it that way. Is that scenario, so to answer your question, if I set an appointment with Matt in that to come out because I wanted him to be educated on the market, the purpose of me going on that appointment, in my mind, yes, it's an appointment, but I'm still prospecting. I'm not expecting, although, and I will tell you this, you will have times that somebody says in that scenario, yeah, in the next couple of years, we're thinking about it, that I show up to his house and we start to talk, and all of a sudden it goes from 2 years to, we might do it in the next 6 months. We've been talking and thinking about it, and it's kind of funny that you came to the door, blah, 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 blah. So somebody who's really 2 years out, that's the other side of it, is most of the time. Now, there's always going to be exceptions, but most of the time, somebody who is 2 years out is not actually, even if I said, well, would you like to be over-prepared or under-prepared? He may schedule an appointment with me, but he's probably not going to keep it. Meaning he's going to call and cancel first. If they're really 2 years out, they're probably not going to let me show up to their house for an appointment, even if he agreed to one. And the reason being is because if they're really 2 years out, they're seeing there's no value in it. Now, in the event that I do go out on the appointment with him, though, there's probably a pretty good chance it's happening in less than a year. If he will let me show up on the appointment.
Question, what would this appointment look like?
Okay, good, perfect. Yeah, so what the appointment's gonna look like then is I'm gonna show up, and all I'm gonna do is, if you go, and Dan, for you, I'm sure you probably have something else. I think everybody else is Utah on here. If I'm wrong, tell me, either unmute or put it in the chat box. But I think Dan's the only California. So thanks for representing, Dan. But on the Utah's MLS, if up in the top, you'll see statistics, and then there's a sales per month report. So what my appointment would look like is I would print off that sales per month report. So Matt, when you said you were going to start using the sit down and talk about what's going on in the market, this is what I would do, is I would go statistics, sales per month, and then I would just sit down and show them, here's how many homes per month are selling. I usually just did it for Salt Lake County. You could do it by the city or the neighborhood if you want. I always just did it for the whole county. In Salt Lake County, this is how many homes are selling each month. And then from there, I would show them, here's like the average list to sales price, days on market, just kind of some market information. And then what I would have told him is just, here's what's going on in the market. And so for you guys right now, if you had to tell somebody what's going on in the market, how would you define it today? What's going on?
Seller's market, interest rates are extremely low, lower historic lows.
Okay, and what's going
I would
on?
also say that
Sell a house.
you would get, well, yes, but for on the buyer side, sometimes you might offer lists and people are going 15, 20,000 over sometimes for a property.
Okay, perfect.
For storage of home.
So essentially, that's what you would want to do on this meeting is you're just going to educate, here's what's going on in the market. And then what I would say to Matt is, so here's my plan is I'm going to stay in touch with you. Now, if when I got out to his house, he was still going to be 2 years out, I would just say, I'm going to stay in touch with you once a month where I'm just going to update you what's changing in the market. So that phone call once a month might be like, hey, Matt, nothing's really changed in the market. Like we're still multiple offers, blah, blah, blah. Or I might be, hey, it's winter time now and things have slowed a little bit. I mean, like whatever it is, I'm just going to call to update him on here's what has happened over the last little bit. And I'm just going to keep doing that. Now, the closer we get, now, if I got out there and he said we're going to be doing it in the next few months, I'm going to probably stay in touch with him every couple of weeks. So the closer we get to when he would do it, the more often I'm going to contact him. Yeah, amazing interest rates. Perfect. Does that make sense? So the idea again with this being is I just want to go get in front of these people because here's what I have learned. And I guess this is the takeaway for you guys. Here's what I have learned. This piece of this of setting an appointment, even if it's an I-time appointment where I say I'm still prospecting. I'm really just doing lead follow-up, but I'm actually doing it in person with him is all it is. What I have found though is this. If somebody will schedule an appointment now, because keep in mind, this appointments phase is about setting an appointment. I'm not saying keeping the appointment. I don't care. Here's what I learned. It didn't matter if Matt fell through or not. The fact that I got him to agree to an appointment at a date and a time. So for me, it's got to have a place, a certain time, and a purpose. Like sometimes I will hear agents do this. Hey, Jake, so would it be okay if I gave you a call back next week and we set up a time to get together?
Sure.
I see agents hang up and go, oh, bad, yeah, I got an appointment. To me, that's not an appointment because that's a callback to where I can set an appointment. To me, an appointment is, does afternoons or evenings work better for you?
Evenings.
Evenings, so at 4 or 5 be better tomorrow.
5.
So 5 o'clock tomorrow. Okay, that's an appointment to me. If it's hey, I'll call you, even if I said, hey, let's pencil it in for 5 o'clock tomorrow. Is that okay?
Yeah.
I'll count that as an appointment. But there's got to be at a specific place, at a specific time, and a purpose. For me, those are the 3 things that have to line up for it to be an appointment. If it's, well, give me a call back next week. Yeah, we could probably meet on Wednesday, but just call me on Tuesday and we'll set a time. That's not an appointment.
So right now, I've done a lot of, because I haven't done a lot of this, but I've been setting a lot of phone appointments, like I'm gonna call you at this time. But I mean, I don't know, I probably should take the approach to get in front of them, get in
Yes.
person.
Yes.
Would you recommend like asking to go to their house? Would you recommend asking to meet at like a restaurant? Like what would you?
Yes.
Anywhere.
I don't
Just to
care.
See them.
Yep.
Yeah.
I don't care if it's at the office. I don't care if it's at Starbucks. I don't care if it's at their house. You want to get a place, a time, and a purpose. For me, that's what defines an appointment.
So you
Now-
you prefer to never do it over the phone if it's like first appointment.
Well, I'm not saying I won't do one over the phone, but I don't want, that's not
That's not what you're looking for.
that's like a last effort for me.
Okay.
Like now today, in today's world, if they were worried about COVID, if they will do a Zoom or a FaceTime, I probably would say, yeah, go ahead and count it.
Mhm.
But as soon as we get past this and there's, whatever past this means, I don't know what that means anymore, but
Yeah, seriously.
But when we're past this, and we will be, I'm not going to count that unless they're from out of state, then to where we can't do it any other way. But yeah, for me, and here's why. Here's what I have found. The secret to this for me in terms of setting the appointment every day is setting the appointment. Probably 50% are going to fall through. Like if he's 2 years out, when I call to confirm, he's going to go, yeah, let's wait. That's fine. Great. I'll stay in touch with you still. I'm okay with that. But here's what I know. If you can set the appointment and they show up, you'll do a deal with them. It is very likely that if they do a deal, I mean, there are some that, yeah, we get maybe getting a job transfer and you go meet with them and then the job transfer falls through, or you go out there and the price they were thinking they're not going to be able to get it. And so that they're going to have to bring cash to, like those type of scenarios are going to happen. But for the most part, if you get in front of the person, you'll do a deal with them. Like that's why it's so important that it's just set the appointment. And then if you get on it, you'll do a deal. It is very likely you'll do the deal with them if you get in front of them. That's why it's so crucial that you make that happen. All right. Let me make sure, any questions, I guess. Let me make sure that I've covered everything.
No, I was just gonna say, it's easy, it's harder for people to say no to you in person, I think, than over the phone, right? I mean, they'll say, yeah, you know what I mean? But when you get, to me, when I get in front of the person, that's definitely, you get to know them and you get to know about their kids, like we were talking about, right? And like Russ was saying, and you're building that rapport with them, right? And the relationship. So that's why I think in person is always better.
Yeah, totally agree. Okay, so Dan had a question. He said on here, how would you approach your SOI using this strategy? So yeah, that's a great question, Dan. So here's how I like to do it with the SOI is, now to some extent, Dan, this is going to depend on the person. And what I mean by that is how well I know the person versus it. Like, cause you got some people in your SOI that you're like, yeah, I know them, but I don't really like know them. So versus somebody that like your family member, like that, I guess those are kind of the extremes in your SOI that I would say is you've got kind of my family member that like, yeah, if they do a deal, they're using me. I probably wouldn't worry as much about one of those, But the ones that are on the other end of this extreme is, and I assume that's probably the ones that you're referring to, Dan, is I would say on that end of the extreme is I would look for, hey, I'm doing some, I'm trying to think of the word I would use, updating of my database or whatever. And I just wanted to come out and spend some time talking to you about real estate and kind of seeing what your goals and objectives are. And to some extent, even I would say on this, Dan, it kind of depends on where you want to be on it. And what I mean by that is, like, one of the things that I would do with some of my SOI is I would even say to them, I want to come out and talk to you about investing and how it works and how much money you would need as a down payment and properties and things like that in terms of finding out if they're really serious. So I guess ultimately, what I would say, Dan, is if it's an SOI, somebody that I feel like I have built enough rapport and there's enough connection and stuff there, that I don't necessarily need one, I probably wouldn't worry about it. But those people that are in your SOI that you're like, maybe you met them in an open house a year ago and you've been staying in touch with them, but you've never actually sat down with them on those ones, then here's how I like to do it. And which actually this works good. What I'm going to give to you guys actually is a good one to use when you're struggling in any prospecting of setting an appointment. This is a good way of getting an appointment, okay? And so this is what I would do, Dan, is if it's somebody from the SOI like that you met at an open house a year ago, but you've added them to your database, but you haven't really met with them, is I would use this. And so same thing with, like I say, just if I'm trying to get an appointment with somebody, and I've actually even used this with like a buyer that I don't even know where they live. So just keep in mind, because I know some of you are going to say, well, what if it's a buyer and you don't know, what if you don't know where they live? It doesn't matter. It still works. And that's this. When I'm on the phone with them, so let's use for Dan though, let's say it's an SOI off of an open house from a year ago. I'm going to call them up. And so I'm going to say, hey, Dan, this is Russ with Century 21. We met about a year ago at this other open house. And hey, I actually am going to be out in your area on Wednesday at about between 4 and 6 p.m. Which would be the best time for me to stop by? Would 4 or 5 be better for you, for me to just stop in? All I want to do is just connect with you, give you a card, just make sure that you know who I am still because we met a year ago, and just give you some information on what's going on in the market. That's how I like to do it. So the same thing. So let's go now. Let's talk about like for sale by owner. Let's use that for a minute. I'm on with the for sale by owner. So Aaron, you're the for sale by owner. And I'm trying to get an appointment and you keep telling me no. So, hey, so tell me no a couple of times. So I want to stop by and just share with you what I do to get a home sold.
No, thank you.
Okay. Well, hey, I understand that you're still trying to do it on your own. And if I were you, I would want to do that too. My assumption is you want to net the most amount of money, right?
Yes.
Okay,
But
so if there was a way that I could help you net the same or more money by using an agent still, would that be of interest to you? Yes.
yeah, but I don't know if I buy it yet.
Great, well, that's the very reason we need to get together. So what would be better for you, afternoon or evening?
Would you have-
No, I'm shaking my head no to tell me no. I'm
Oh,
giving you a hint, say no.
You know what? No, I really, I honestly, I don't want to do this.
You don't want to meet with me? Okay, well, hey, I totally understand. If I were you, I would feel the same way. You know what, though? Actually, I'm just looking at this. You know what, Aaron? I'm actually just going to be just a couple of streets away from you on Thursday at about 5 o'clock. Would it be okay if I just stopped by before or after that meeting?
I won't let you through my doorway.
Oh, that's okay. I'm okay with not going through your doorway. It's okay to tell me yes now. I'm okay if you don't let me through the doorway. I just want to just meet you and give you some information about the market and what I do to get a home sold. So would before 4 o'clock or after 5 be better for you?
After 5.
After 5. Okay. So I'll stop by on Thursday after 5 and just on the doorstep. I promise I won't try to come in. Is that okay?
Sounds okay.
Okay, good. So anyway, I don't know if that's helpful or not, Dan, but I think on some of those that are in your database that you have not met, one of two things: either call and just say, hey, I'm offering a service to the people that are in my database, and you might not even want to say database, but people that I stay in touch with, a select group of people, something like that. where I'm just going to do a market update for them, where I'll provide for them, here's what your home is worth today. And I'm offering that. I'm going to actually be out close to your house on Thursday, or you pick the date and time you want to go, and just say, I'm going to be close to your home during that time. Would it be okay if I just stop by and drop off this market analysis to you, showing you what your home's worth? Go ahead.
Now, to me, that sounds better than the first one, a lot.
Well, the first one was a for sale by owners,
Okay.
so that is going to
Yeah,
be different.
Yeah.
So I got Carla said she would do it. So
Well,
But-
I think the first time, I was like, okay, no, I'm not gonna do, but okay, now he's trying another approach on me. I'm just gonna be in your area and I'm just gonna, why am I so like negative? I'm just going, okay.
Okay, but
Now
here's
he's
part of
not
what.
gonna be in my area, he's just pushing me. You know?
Well, you got to get past that.
I know.
So, because here's the thing, I've worked a lot of internet leads, and I will tell you, I have done that with internet leads too, Matt. I have said to
Sometimes
them,
I get I'll get frustrated and say, this doesn't work, and then he gets on the phone and he's got an appointment, but it's like, not that he doesn't, take no, but he's always trying to find an opportunity, like it's an opportunity for them, like he believes that it's an opportunity for them if they need,
And I
right?
think it's all
but I've
about
done that
role
with
playing,
buyers.
too.
But here's the point. I've done it with buyers too, where I've just said, hey, so Aaron, I'm actually going to be right in your area on Wednesday, probably around 3:00. Would it be okay if I just stop by before or after? And they're like, well, yeah, I guess it's fine. And then you can just go, okay, great. Well, so give me your address.
Yeah.
Like, see,
Tell
but-
them the story about how we were in that training and you made a phone call and you closed that deal with the
Oh,
lady.
yeah.
She didn't want anything to do with you.
yeah, so which that is another good point. So we were in doing just a virtual call around thing, and I couldn't get anybody to make calls. So I just said, fine, I'll make some calls. So I got on and made the call, and the lady answered the phone, and she was very like, oh no, we're just kind of seeing what's out
Just
there.
looking.
Yeah, just looking, and it was an old lead, like it was one I'd had for a while. And she said, yeah, we're just looking. And I said, hey, that's great. I appreciate that you're just looking, and I don't remember exactly which of these things that I used on her, but I basically just said, have you had a chance to sit down and talk to anybody what's going on in the market? No. Well, what I would like to do is just sit down and educate you as to what's going on in the market. I understand you're not ready. I work with my clients at their pace. I'm not going to push you, but if you were going to buy, what area would you want to be in? And she said, Woods Cross or Bountiful. And I said, oh, Woods Cross or Bountiful. You know what? Actually, I know of a property that's for sale in that area. Hasn't hit the market yet. It's being rehabbed right now. It could be and this was totally true. I'm not making this up. So I said, I know of one that's in that area. What price range are you wanting to be in? And she said, like 250 or something like that, or 200, I don't know. And I said, oh, this one's actually was it was in that price range before it was fixed. And I said, depending on what you could qualify for, like, how did you determine your qualification? And she said, we just kind of are guessing what we think it will be. And I said, oh, okay, well, let me have my lender give you a call. So I got her in touch with the lender. And in fact, it was Chris that's here in the office right here. Got her in touch with him, but it took a little bit. So here's the key thing that I want you guys to see too with this is she said, yes, have him call. I sent it to him. He called. She didn't respond. I asked him a couple days later, did you get a hold of her? Well, I tried, but she hasn't responded. So I said, well, all right, well, I'm going to call her right now. So I hung up, I called her. She answered the phone. I said, hey, have you talked to Chris? And she said, oh no, I did see that he called. I just haven't had a chance to call him back. And I said, okay, well, great. Like there's some good properties out there. So I really need you to talk to him so that we can go find you something. And she said, I'll call him today, I promise, which then she did. And anyway, we ended up finding her a property. But here's the point of this. It is not uncommon and here's what my true belief is. If I had not made that phone call, she would not have bought yet. So I think what Jake said earlier is right on. To some extent, sometimes going out on the appointment with Matt, like we were talking about, what ends up happening is it's planted the seed and it now gets him excited about it. In fact, I was talking to an agent this morning about, actually it was my son, he's an agent, but I forgot it was my son. So I'll just say I was talking to my son. But I was talking to him today about somebody though, a different agent that he was talking to that sold a house to some people a year ago or 18 months ago. because of what our property values have done over here in the last little while, he had just called them and said, hey, just wanted to give you an update. So this goes to what we were talking about, Dan. He had called and just said, I just want to give you an update on that house you bought 18 months ago. Here's what it's probably worth today. Congratulations on doing that, because in the last 18 months, it's gone up in that area, apparently like almost 100,000 or something. And the people are like, are you kidding me? We could sell it for that much for now. And he said, yeah, it's that one just down the street, exact same floor plan, just sold for whatever the price was. And they said, wow, we want to sell it and go buy something else.
Don't you have to be there 2 years or something like that? Isn't there a minimum requirement of how long you have to be there before you can, like, invest, it's not an investment property?
Yeah, so it's you have to live there 2 of the last 5 years. So they technically could run up against that something.
Yeah.
But the answer to that's have them talk to their CPA there, because I'll tell you what, in my 25 years of doing this, I don't think I've ever had anyone ever end up having to pay. Now, it doesn't mean they won't. I'm not saying that they won't, but usually a good CPA can find a way of dealing with it. So that's a good
Listen again.
well, I don't know if he has yet, but it sounds like he's probably going to be listing it.
That's great.
In
That's a
18
great
months later.
idea. I've never even, hey, this is what your house is worth now.
I
Yeah.
really like that idea.
Yeah, especially for your SOI. And that's where, so when Dan brought that up, like, honestly, that is a good one for that. But again, to some extent, that's going to be the low hanging fruit of getting appointments. But I will tell you what, if you guys will leave here and do that, go call every person you know and say, I want to come out. And even if you called up the people you know and said, for you guys that are new, and just said, I need someone to practice on.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you, I have told agents this before and they get deals out of it. Call up some of your friends and family and just say, can I come practice on you? And just, I want to do a market analysis for you. Come out and do a practice listing presentation. You get people to agree to doing it, and you go out and do a listing presentation and show them here's, especially with how a lot of people may not realize how much their homes have gone up in value. You go do that with them and they go, wow, I had no idea. I'm telling you, what Jake said is right. You plant the seed that then some of them will take root and grow and others won't. But if it does take root, because I'm telling you, the guy that said to me when I told you that he asked me, when are you going to move? And I said, never moving. And a year later I moved. Looking back, he planted the seed, because I started saying, well, if I did move, this is what I would want. And I would want to do this. And then now all of a sudden I started looking, and then I'd sell it. Go ahead, Carl.
Well, I don't remember where I heard this, but in some of the training that when you're calling your SOI, like, I mean, I have a ton of people I call that know me. And I'd like to say, hi, Johnny, how's this? How are you today? Oh, Carla, how are you guys? How's your friend? And go on and on and on. You cut it right to the chase and say, hey, I'm now at Center 21, or I'm at Center 21 today, and I'm calling you up. I'm making a business call today. And then go on and just put that in their mind that you're calling with a business purpose, not just to catch up.
Mhm.
And I like that a lot.
Yeah, so on that for me, depended on the person if I did that or not.
Right.
Meaning I like the idea of setting it up with them as to, hey, I'm going to once a month call you as a business call that I'm only going to take 2 or 3 minutes of your time, or I'm just with friends and family that you know really well.
Right.
Because then that way, if they do go, oh, did you hear about so-and-so?
Yeah.
They got COVID and they were blah, blah, and you can be
Yeah.
like, hey, you know what? I'm doing my business calls. Let me call you back in about an hour. Is that okay? Because I want to hear about Johnny, but right now I got to finish my business calls. And I like to keep it kind of separate that way too,
Yeah.
but personal preference. All right. Questions? Okay. So the last phase of this, which we're not going to really spend any time, but this is what I would call the transactions phase. So the last phase is the transaction phase. Here's where you're focused on appointments. When you go to this phase is really kind of actually the next step to really ramping it up. And here's what I will tell you. When you want to do like 150 transactions a year, like where Brian Burnett is, that phase you have to keep. Remember right here, this was set an appointment every day. When you want to go to the transaction, which really doubles your income from here, I mean, like when I'm talking about keeping an appointment every day, I'm talking about you making $600,000, $700,000, $800,000, $1 million a year. You can do that, but you have to keep an appointment every day. That's this transaction phase, is essentially you're keeping an appointment. Here you're setting an appointment every day. This one you're keeping an appointment. If you had to keep an appointment every day, you probably have to have 2 or 3 scheduled for every day so that you could keep one of them. Because again, typically half the time they're going to end up canceling on you, or either day of or day before or whatever, rescheduling, whatever. So you typically need to have 2 scheduled every day in order for you to keep 2. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
All right. Questions? I think we'll wrap up. It's gonna be a little early, but I'm gonna wrap up on that unless you guys have questions.
Well, I was just thinking, all this stuff is, you can put your contacts, appointments, activities, but you're not really making any money unless you close the transaction ultimately, right?
Right. But the whole thing that generates it, so you're right, but the whole thing that gets the whole thing going is appointments, is setting that appointment. And if what I will tell you is, if you will set an appointment, if you will commit to, I'm setting an appointment every day, and you will get yourself to do it and really set an appointment, all of a sudden the business just flies. Like I'm telling you, you will make, it's funny because I'm going back then. So I'm talking 22 years ago, 23 years ago, something like that, is when I learned this process. And it took me to over $100,000 in the first year. Like you look at what home prices, like we're probably talking 250 or 300,000 if you would set an appointment every single day. And maybe it's even 3 or 4, but just set an appointment every day. Just set one appointment. That's it. All right, so tomorrow. So tomorrow we'll be back in the training room, although this has not been bad, but we'll be back in the training room tomorrow. What we're gonna do is we're gonna go through and create a list of all the ways to prospect, and then we're gonna go through and talk about the specifics on how to do that. So where we're gonna start tomorrow on is this, is you have to connect, you have to create value, and you have to close. Like in essence, I don't care what source you're using for prospecting, those 3 things have to happen. So tomorrow we'll start by kind of just running through that. Then we're going to make a list of all the different ways, and then I'll go through and talk about here's how to work for sale by owners. I'm going to give you some ideas. Well, here's how you're going to do expireds. Here's how to do just listed, just sold. Here's how to do internet leads. Like we're going to run through and talk about all the different sources, and I'll do it kind of in the order you guys want to, meaning if nobody cares about for sale by owners, then we won't even talk about it unless, but makes sense? So that's what tomorrow's going to look like. So cool. Okay. Thanks for being here. Thanks for being online, you guys. And tomorrow,
Thank
10
you.
o'clock, we'll be in the train in Utah time, 9 in California. We'll be in the training room.
Is Corbin on there?
I did not see Corbin online.
Okay,
So
good to know.
why?
I'm his accountability.
Because yeah, let him know.